I want to tell you guys a story. It's kind of a combination of how did we end up in New Orleans and I guess maybe something you would think of as paranormal. I hope these sirens in the background aren't too much. So, in order for us to buy the house here in New Orleans, we had to sell our house in Providence where we were living. And the house in Providence needed to sell for us to make enough money for us to afford a house here because houses are expensive in the French Quarter. What's going on? But in order for us to have been able to buy the house in Providence, we needed to actually have been able to sell our house in Quincy, Massachusetts. And if Quincy hadn't happened, then Providence wouldn't have happened. And if Providence wouldn't have happened, New Orleans wouldn't have happened. We would not have gone. We lived in a very modest, home in Norwood, Massachusetts, which is a great town. If you were from Norwood, go Mustangs. But yeah, so this dates back to, so at the time, the first 20-ish years of my career, I worked in financial services, and one of my bosses was really great. He and his wife had this beautiful Victorian in Quincy, Massachusetts, and for Christmas each year, what he and his wife would do is they would host a dinner. They would have it catered, and so instead of giving each individual person a bottle of wine or whatever it was that a boss would give them for dinner, they would invite you and your partner, your spouse, to their home, and they would have a dinner that we would all share together. It was such a gracious thing to do, and it was a really wonderful experience. And I can remember being in that house and thinking, I'll never be able to own anything like this. It was such a beautiful old gem of a house. And fast forward, I probably hadn't worked for him for 10 years. And I heard his wife had passed through the grapevine, and I went to the service. It was great to see him. It was so sad. She was such a great woman. But my husband and I were really concerned about his well-being. And so we made a point of trying to see him once a month, right? Like, let's go out and have drinks, let's go have dinner. And we were doing that, and then I hadn't talked to him for like 2 months, and I remember feeling really anxious about it, like I'm being a bad friend. I need to connect with him, but I hadn't done anything about it, which I don't know if this is you as well, but like I hate it when I get like that. But there's probably a really good reason for that. So I wake up one morning, it's in like December, and I say to Michael, like, I just had this really vivid dream about my old boss, Kevin, and that he wanted us to buy his house. And it was just crazy. I must need to like see him. It's affecting my dreams now, right? I feel so badly about it. And so I sent him and my other colleague, Steve, a text and just said, hey, can we do dinner this week? Let's make this happen. Great. So I get to the restaurant. My friend Steve is already there. I sit down next to him. We're chatting, waiting for Kevin. Kevin comes in. He sits down across from me and he says, do you want to buy my house? And I said, did Michael tell you? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, Michael must have told you. Michael told you that I had this dream that you wanted to sell the house, which is why I set up this dinner. He's like, no, Michael did not talk to me about it. But I want to sell my house, and I want to sell my house to someone who will love it, who will take care of it. Not someone who's going to like break it into pieces and make condos out of it. And I was like, well, do I want your house? Yeah, of course I want your house, but I can't afford your house. And he said, I'll give you a price that you can afford. So what had happened was he had met someone, and they are both in and of themselves well off, and they didn't want to live in either one of their previous homes because those were homes they had shared with previous partners. They wanted to buy a new home together. And I said, well, okay. I said, but my mom lives with us, so like it will have to be right for her too. And he's like, my brother Mike and I bought that house together, and we had it broken out into basically like two separate, like independent spaces. Let me show you what we did. So we brought my mom over there, like, I don't know, like 5 days later, and we did a walkthrough of the house, and she loved the house. And so suddenly this thing that could never possibly happen was possible. But we needed to sell our house. Now, our house in Norwood, it was great. There was the main house, there was a mudroom, and then there was a 2-bedroom apartment in the back connected by the mudroom. My parents lived in that in-law apartment. And now I thought my dad had gotten all of the permits and everything signed off. I think so, maybe not completely, not sure. It was kind of like a towny thing. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Didn't appear that everything was on file, but the guy who had done the inspection was a little forgetful. Yeah. So anyway, so we list the house, but it's a good house for the right buyer. But oops, my husband's looking at me. Yeah, it's a good house for the right buyer, but it needed the right buyer. And so we had it on the market for months, and we had a lot of people looking at it, but nobody was biting. And I went back to my former boss, Kevin, and I said, look, I don't want to hold you up. I know you want to sell the house so you can move into your new, buy a new home. He's like, oh, no, we're already buying a new home. We're doing that ourselves. I don't need to sell this house in order to fund my new purchase, so you have time. So, a house I love at a price we can afford that my mom is happy to move to with as much time as we need to sell our house. And so we ended up selling our house, and we moved into the house in Quincy, which was such a beautiful gem of a home. It was an old Victorian. If you watch my video on how did we get to New Orleans, you'll know that after Quincy came Providence. So when you get older, you think about downsizing, right? So, and we used to say when the kids were young, we were living in Norwood. We had the house with the in-law apartment. We were like, when the kids get old enough, they move out, we're going to sell the house. My mom and dad can move into a condo. We will have our own place. We're going to downsize. So we went from Norwood to Quincy, which was 5 bedrooms, to Providence, which was 8 bedrooms plus another 2-bedroom apartment. Things do not turn out the way you think they will. It's why when people ask me, like, are you going to stay in New Orleans? Do you see yourself being here forever? Like, yes, until that's not true anymore, because we most definitely have experienced that life unfolds in ways that you would never expect. So that is how we got Quincy, which is how we got Providence, which is how we got New Orleans. And it's how, Michael and Kevin both swear they never talked about the fact that I had that dream, but that's how I feel like I did a video over on TikTok about this. I'll probably do something longer form here, but we call things paranormal, and that gives you this sense that it is not normal. Like, that's almost what para means to people. Paranormal to people means, well, it's not normal. It just means not described by science. And I would argue that all of these type of air quote paranormal experiences are just completely normal. That's how, I don't think we have any idea how reality works, but I'm pretty sure it's not as boring as we think it is. So anyway, I hope that was interesting for y'all. If you have any other topics you want me to cover, let me know, and be sure to like and subscribe. Share this video. It helps the channel grow, and I would be most grateful. Thanks.